Oh, hi everybody. Yep, it's not been good. Guys, I look like this not because I've been working hard or doing stuff. I look like this because I just watched TNA Victory Road. It was so bad, I won't even do a review of it. So for everyone who asked me, no, no review. It was that bad. No, I'm just joking. I've been working extra hours. Um, Actually, this is just a video on the Affliction goings on uh, that's been taking place for the last week. It seemed like in the space of 3 or 4 days, everything has changed in the MMA world again. For those of you who already know or don't know or whatever, Josh Barnett was suspended, failed a drug test while applying for a license, which through the big main event, Fedor versus Barnett, which has been many years in the making because everyone wanted to see that in Pride, didn't happen. Now we get it in America, and the American audience familiar for them. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. The American audience were familiar with them, and everyone wanted to see it. Biggest fight outside of the UFC, that is. And then a spanner in the works with Barnett getting suspended, so it threw their main event just out there. And then just trying to find a replacement. Overeem couldn't because of a hand injury that he had sustained. Who else was there? Shamrock, I still think can't fight anyway because of a suspension. Ken, that is, sorry. And God forbid he did because he'd get killed. Sorry, Ken. Um, I think Don Fry put his name out there. Tank Abbott put his name out there. Bobby Lashley was a name that was thrown around, but with the TNA stuff. And really, that's too early of a fight for him to take. I think at this point in his career, so he did the wise thing. Brett Rogers was another name that was mentioned, and sorry, One Tree Hill's on. Brett Rogers was another name that was mentioned, but that would be too early, and that would damage the investment that Strikeforce had put in him. And considering he'd just come off looking very good against Arlovsky and his fight before that on the first Strikeforce taping, it was a risk putting him there when this could be a future star. So then the only other names were Fabricio Verdum, who didn't want to take the fight, and Vitor Belfort. And I thought if Belfort gets this fight, he's at a huge disadvantage fighting someone 2 weight classes heavier than he was. And considering he's been training to get to a middleweight, this might stop his momentum as he seems to be kind of having a career rebirth right now as a middleweight. And the big dream fight with him and Anderson Silva, everybody wants to see it. But it looked like it was going to be Belfort versus Fedor at the August 1st card. And then, well, Affliction decided they didn't have enough time to promote the event and they cancelled off the event. And then they sorted out all kinds of negotiations. I think Showtime actually withdrew from the advertising aspect and the sponsoring and all of that, which was not surprising. And then all the bad press that Barnett had probably created with the suspension, Affliction decided to cancel the card and then cancelled doing any kind of MMA events. And from what I understand, if you go on their website, any knowledge of any MMA events that they did in the past has been wiped off. So it's like Affliction never happened. Uh, my thoughts on it are I feel really bad for all the fighters who were going to fight on that card, especially considering they spent months and months training and dieting and all this hard work, and in a way it's kind of all for nothing because of all the goings on behind the scenes. And that's really bad, they're not even going to get their money back and they've got to try and look elsewhere for work. And they're kind of limited in some ways because only a handful of them, I think, would get picked up by Strikeforce in the UFC and then possibly Dream. So, I feel really bad for a lot of the fighters there. I really, really do feel bad. Realistically, the people I see going back to the UFC, I could probably see Vitor Belfort. I think I guarantee that he's going back there. They want the fight with him and Anderson Silva. There's rumours going around already that he's supposed to be fighting Dan Henderson, which is interesting. So, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think Henderson, I don't know. Belfort's been looking a lot better these days, but I think Henderson might be him. Um, Fedor is another name. Where does Fedor go now? Fedor has now just become familiar with the American audience. He's starting to become a draw hit in America. And this is probably a setback for him. So where does he go? Does he go to Strikeforce? Does he go to UFC to keep that exposure in America? Because he won't get that in Dream if he fights in Japan, even though he's probably would prefer it in some ways. I think Strikeforce should put all the money they can together because signing Fedor would be a very wise investment, but the talent pool of heavyweights isn't too deep. So it's like, who do you give him? Because he's already fought Arlovsky. I think Fabricio Verdum's there and Alistair Overeem. But after that, I mean, actually, Overeem and Fedor could do quite well on TV. I think Strikeforce may not financially give him the bigger offer in comparison to the UFC, but I think they are more than likely to give him leeway in the contract to do other commitments like compete in Sambo. So I think they have that in their favour, and maybe that's how they can get Fedor. And they really need to recruit all the talent they can as they're building their promotion, building the stars and adding new stars and existing stars to draw the fans in. UFC have got a good chance of getting him now, I think. Dream obviously is an option. I think UFC have got a good chance, but what kind of contract will they offer him? We don't know. We all know that Dana White would like to have him on an exclusive contract, like he does with all his fighters. A one-fight deal could happen, but after the Crow Crop mess, I'm not too sure if he'll do that again. Even though some of that was Dana's fault, but there you go. They may offer him a contract, and I think it'd probably be a one-fight deal and then negotiate another one after that. And with obviously the big fights with Brock Lesnar, which would be a huge, huge fight actually. It'd be one of the biggest fights ever, and possibly Couture as well. So I mean, there's lots of fighters he's never fought before in the UFC. As for Josh Barnett, I don't know where he'll go after this. I don't think it's the end of his career as a top flight fighter because he's, but given the nature of what's happened with him, I think some promoters are going to steer clear of promoting him as a main event fighter with the risk of these things happening, which is a shame. Barnett is a very, very talented and gifted MMA fighter and a masterful catch wrestler. Top 5 heavyweight, absolutely. It's a shame that this happened with him. Really unfortunate. But at the same time, if you're a professional athlete, you're aware of what you're putting in your body, and you're aware of what is banned and isn't banned. So, there it goes. Oh, one more thing, because this is the MMA portion of my video. Apparently, Tito Ortiz and Dana White have made up, which is actually really funny to me because watching those two argue is like watching that couple in school that went out, ended for some stupid reason, and then slag each other off for months and months and months and months, and even up to years, and they'll never go back to each other. They then sleep with each other, realise how good it is, and then they're back together again, and then give it a few more months, and then they'll be trashing each other again. Sorry, I just felt like saying that, but no, really, it's good. I think this opens the door for a possible Ortiz return. It's alleged that if he does return, the UFC are going to offer him a fight with. Sorry, something just distracted me there. The UFC are going to offer him a fight with Rich Franklin, which could be a big money fight, and I think they need something for their September show, so it's likely. But I don't think Ortiz will be ready for September. I think October, considering he's only been training properly for about 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks or at the most. So who knows? I think we're going to have a lot of bidding wars now for a lot of these available fighters: Tito, Fedor, Verdum, Vitor Belfort. So anyway, guys, that's the MMA video. Leave your comments and feedback and everything else. And to all the wrestling guys out there, don't worry, I've not forgotten about you. I'm going to do some wrestling videos next. Okay? Thank you. Oh, one more thing. I've got to give a good big thank you to the Dirty White Boy for making these comments that he's done and allowing me to post the video response. That is much and greatly appreciated. Thank you, young man. Alright, bye.